Yeah, so on your data model, Himanshoo, can you go to data
Sure.
model?
Yep.
So you have mentioned that pickup request is going to be an external, right?
Right.
So what will happen if the pickup gets cancelled? How will you notify customer and how will you notify driver and all those things? What will happen?
So when a pickup gets cancelled through the external CDC, although we only get every packet comes as an creation packet, but for the update also we'll get a packet which would be subscribed on the Salesforce. Through that, we can then notify the uh, customer that a pickup has been cancelled, because each of the pickup requests in my data model are linked to a particular schedule.
Because this is an external object, can you write automation logic like flow or email or how would you notify customer?
So the notification is written on the back of the external CDC packet. It's not directly on the, as in I'm not writing the flow directly on the object because that is not possible. So what I have proposed is that I'll enable external CDC on the pickup request object. And when a packet comes in, that packet would be subscribed by a particular flow in Salesforce. And through the information in that packet, I would be able to take appropriate actions.
So who will consume the packet first, whether it would be Salesforce or MuleSoft?
Yes.
Okay.
So no, the way it is going to work is that every time there is a cancellation in pickup in the logistics system, it would intimate MuleSoft through an API call.
Mhm.
As my OData service is exposed via MuleSoft into Salesforce, MuleSoft would create an external CDC packet into Salesforce, and to create that packet, typically Salesforce does a polling onto the OData service. So the polling happens from Salesforce. That polling is also counted against the limit of 20,000 per hour.
Mhm.
But based on that polling, every time there is a change in the OData, it would be able to pick that up and publish the external CDC packets.
Yeah, but you configure the external CDC through the configuration, right? So there is a
Yes, you,
configuration for which you
as part of the OData service, when I am configuring it, I can enable the writable as well as external CDC as part of OData as an external object configuration when I do the external data service configuration.
Yeah, but the question I'm asking, so how will you enable that whenever I'm receiving a cancellation, I should trigger something? Where would you configure that trigger?
So Ram, the way my understanding is that whenever there would be a cancellation in the logistics system, it would let, as in through the polling of the external CDC packet, Salesforce would get a new packet,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and a flow would have subscribed to that packet. And in the information of that flow, we would get the status as cancelled and a uh, pickup request ID along with the schedule ID. And
Yeah,
I'll be
but it doesn't work like this, right? Because you configure the external CDC through a configuration, and when you are configuring the CDC, there is no option to configure flow at that point. So if you want to
right,
go with the flow, then you have to have flow, right? Which will
right.
basically receive the polled data, and then you can write automation on that. But through just by configuring CDC, you cannot do that automation, right? You need to do something for that, right?
Then I think I'm I'll not be able to answer that because maybe my understanding was wrong on that. I'll have a check at that.
Mm-hmm.
And one more question, Himanshu, follow up on that one. Does Salesforce supports Flow on external change data capture, or it's only Apex at this time?
I think it is only Apex. You are right. It is only Apex. You can't subscribe to a flow through a flow to a external chain data capture. You can only subscribe through an Apex trigger. Uh, uh,
Okay.
Chetan, you have any question on this?
Yep. So sticking on the data model, you have these objects called case files, and you have something called as WP files. Can you help me understand what is the justification of these? Why do we need this?
These are the objects. Case files is an object which comes as part of the S drive manage package. So the way S drive works is that for every object where you want to enable S drive to upload files and maintain it in S3, you need to create a files object. For certain objects like account, lead, opportunity, case, the standard Salesforce objects, these objects come out of the box. But as my customer waste profile is a custom object, I would have to create a custom waste profile files object for me to be able to upload files against this record. Because the sharing of the entire files through the record sharing is maintained through the these records which are created, and they also maintain the details of where it is stored on the S3.
Yeah, but can you help me understand why do we need S3 in the first place?
See,
What's the
for
calculation of the files here? Yeah?
yes, each for each of the waste profile, when a waste specialist is going and visiting, he is going and clicking photographs and uploading videos. Now, I'll just quickly show you my calculations. So we are looking at around 400,000 locations in total. And if we assume that for each of these, uh, if you and waste profiles, if you look at here, are 600,000 because I've assumed 3 waste profiles per customer. Now for each of these waste profiles, if I am uploading videos and let's say I am only uploading 50 megabytes of content as videos and images, which is not very huge, this comes to around these many MBs, which is coming to around these many GBs. So
what's the storage available for files as per your licenses?
As per my licenses, I have having 12 TB of storage only. 1200 12870 is the calculation because we've got 750, 500, 180 and 5000 users all put together. 10 GB plus 2 into this gives me a 12 TB of storage. So given that my storage only for waste profiles in itself is exceeding that, and then there are videos and images for cases as well. Hence, I recommended to go with an external file management system to store the files.
Okay. And these files are only needed on the case object or on the customer waste profile, right? You don't need to store anything in terms of the contracts. What happens to the old contracts that were there signed as PDF documents?
So contracts also we would, when we migrate the contract documents, we would migrate the contract files along. For migration, S3 already provides a set of APIs through which you can directly upload the S drive already provides set of APIs through which you can directly upload files into S3 and associate them with records in Salesforce. So as part of contract migration,
with which record? In the contract, you haven't highlighted that standard, that this object then contract files.
Then probably it's a mistake at my end. We would have to have it on the contract as well.
Okay, all right.
Himanshoo, yeah, a few follow up on the same topic. You have a DocuSign in your solution, right? How the DocuSign would work with the S3 files in the envelope document?
Right. So my DocuSign is going to be invoked as an first you generate a document with Conga, and my Conga document is directly going to be delivered to the DocuSign envelope because as part of Conga document generation, there is a delivery option to deliver it to DocuSign envelope. So as part of my Conga document generation, I would deliver it to DocuSign. Till that time, that file would be stored on the files record. Once the signature is done, we can then move the contract file using the Apex methods which S drive exposes to move it to S3 and link it with the contract.
Okay, so are you suggesting that we are going to have a 2 files related list, one for S3 and one for Salesforce files while the document is in progress?
No, while the document signing is in progress, during that scenario, if somebody needs to look at the document, then yes, we'll have to fetch it from the files. But for ensuring that there is a unified view, we can use the LWC component of S drive, and it has an option to show related files of that document, that record as well. It adds that to the view as well. So we don't need to go to a separate view altogether. Within the S drive view itself, we'll be able to see from both the sources.
So basically, you're suggesting is kind of wipe out the whole Salesforce files from all the records, all the page layout, and replace them with S3 files components and their custom objects, right? So
Yes. So S3 file component, as in the S3 component, we don't need to put the custom object related list anywhere on those records. But yes, the S3 file component needs to be dropped for wherever we want to show files.
So go back on your calculation again, right? It seems
Sure.
that your license is providing you around 12,000 GB and you need around
Right.
29,000. You're still going to pay for S3 files, right? You're still going to have a overload on the data migration. You still need to have special handling. You might still need Lightning Web Component you just mentioned. Do you think it's a worth spending money on S3 file? Can't that money be used with the Salesforce file itself? It's
The,
anyways it's a
the,
paid.
there is one more reason why I recommended S3 is because the S3 component doesn't have a limit of 100 MB file when you are uploading it through community or anywhere else. As a result, the benefit is, especially for the mobile users, when they are going to the customer site and uploading it, the 100 MB, the video of an 100 MB is typically an 8 to 10-minute video. So it also takes away that limit for them as well. And then, as I mentioned, for cases also, we're going to have videos and images, which I have not added the calculation for. But if we assume that for all the cases, also there is going to be another 50 MB of videos and images uploaded by the drivers, this will further go up by quite a significant number.
Okay.
One question I have on this. So let's say S3, you need to upload file in S3. So how will, as an external user, I get access of uploading files to the S3?
So the Lightning component which S Drive provides is accessible both on the community as well as for the internal users. The way it works is that as part of S3 configuration, we set up all the S3 authentication within Salesforce in the settings of that package. For using, as in if we are using their Lightning component, then the entire functionality and orchestration of the calls, because it actually needs to do three things. First, it creates a files record in the Salesforce. Then it uploads that file directly into S3, and then it comes back and updates that file record with the details of where it has been uploaded for it to be mapped for a view purpose later on. So the component handles this orchestration end to end on its own, and we as developers don't need to add up anything. But if I'm using APIs to do it, then S Drive provides three APIs. It's a post. First, you got to do a post to a particular endpoint. It returns you the Amazon object itself. So it creates the entire Amazon. It creates a file record in Salesforce, and as a return of that API call, it gives you the complete request structure to your S3, which has the authentication information in it as well. You then upload that file directly into S3, and then you do a put on the previous request itself to update that file record which you have created. So they have this orchestration also pre-built as set of APIs which you can use if you are using a native mobile app, or let's say you are doing migration and as part of ETL you need to do this. And within Salesforce, through the LWC component, the orchestration is taken care on its own.
What user you are going to use between S3 and Salesforce?
So you got to, as in the when you procure the licenses for, if you buy S3 as in the S Drive licenses, you don't need to procure S3 separately. As part of your package where you set up and you sign up for a certain space, they do all the setup of space, getting you the credentials, and then all you need to do is you get all the details in an email. You got to configure it in the Salesforce org with all the bucket ID and everything, and it automatically starts working. So the authentication between Salesforce to S3 and how that credential management is done is taken care by the package itself.
So in case of internal users, can I log into S3 directly and see all the
No,
files?
no. It doesn't give you any access to S3 directly. You cannot even bring in your own S3 storage. You got to sign up with S Drive and they get the storage and they manage the storage for you. So it's like a document management system as a service for you and not a platform as a service which gives you storage which you are buying.
So, Himanshu, your solution is kind of completely replacing Salesforce files, which is a very big functionality, so much impact. Why you are going with S3? Is there any other solution which would be complementary of the Salesforce file and still address the 100 MB limit that you are mentioning?
Yeah.
Yes, as in there are two limits which I am primarily talking about. One is the storage limit itself. So if we say that we can buy more storage and we are going to go ahead and invest into Salesforce files from a storage perspective, then yes, we from a tooling perspective, we could go with something like, I guess, something like a X Files Pro,
So,
which could
Himanshu,
help
sorry,
us.
is there any third solution where you still don't want to purchase Salesforce file, but at the same time you are not replacing the whole Salesforce file capability? Is there any third solution out of the box in Salesforce?
How can we get the best of two?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we could use Files Connect in that case, wherein you upload files into Salesforce and then we could sync those files into an external storage at a later time and keep the link with us only so that we can refer to those files later on. But that would also need me to have some external storage bought somewhere else for it to sync those files into that storage.
So what would be your strategy in that case? When would you migrate file to Salesforce file and when would you move that
So
outside?
in that case, for waste profiles, as soon as the approval is done, contract is signed, we can migrate all the files associated with it to an external storage and recover those on demand whenever we need to view it. For cases, as soon as the case is closed, we could then take the files and uh, put it into external storage and again recover it if we need a view of those in the later at a later stage.
At the moment, Files Connect work with only with few things like Google Drive, Amazon, SharePoint.
Right.
So how will you enable external users accessing those files through Files Connect?
So for that, I think we'll have to build a separate Lightning Web component which is going to handle that interaction. We won't be able to give them access to through the files connect to an external storage. But in our case here, the external users are not anyways accessing those files. So maybe here it is not applicable. But yes, I'm not exactly sure how within files connect I'm going to give it to the external users.
And for internal users, when you configure the Files Connect, what option are you going to use? Per user, name principal, and how and why?
I think I would recommend to go with per user. The benefit of that is that although we'll have to create all those users at the other end as well, we'll be able to have a better security in terms of only the user. We'll able to manage the security of access to those files in that system as well. If we go with a single user base, then anyone can go to the File Connect tab and see all the files there. We won't be able to secure it.
Okay.
So if I'm just sticking to your data model, perhaps maybe I missed this, but what are the assets being used for?
There is a requirement in the sharing, not before that. So even I didn't have it till I reached the point of visibility. It says installed system data for their own customers. So I have mapped installed system data to assets.
But installed systems are sending signals, right? And those signals are already present in the system that you had, right? And what you are saying now that install system you are going to bring back in Salesforce. So are you duplicating these things with the other system that we already have, or what is the advantage of having this in Salesforce?
So Ram, I assume that this installed system data is primarily the installed systems at this customer site, which is creating certain waste which we are recycling out of it. So that's how I understood this installed system data, because it's a medical waste and industrial waste. So they would have assets which is producing certain industrial waste, and as part of the organization, we want to keep the track of all those assets also which the customer owns, which is producing it. That is why I brought it into assets for the customer.
Yeah, because we are here on sharing. So can you go to number 4, I guess?
Sure.
Where you had the external CDC and everything. No.
Right. This is the one, fourth one.
No, not this one. So there is one account hierarchy where you mentioned that you are going to use account contact hierarchy to share all
Here,
the
this
details.
one, six.
Yeah. So can you tell me how will this work? So you have, let's say you have account in
Right.
five hierarchy. Okay, so 5 steps are there, and then I'm sitting at the top, and now I want to see the data which is fifth account related to the fifth account. Can account contact help me on with that?
Yes. So I'll tell you how I've uh, proposed this solution. So for me to set up the hierarchy, the account 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be set up in a certain hierarchy. Each of these accounts will have a primary contact and secondary contacts. Now, every time you populate a lookup, a parent account lookup on a particular account, this will trigger a record trigger flow, which would create account contact relationship record for the primary contact of the parent account with the secondary account which is getting added. Because from down to up, I can share directly using up to 3 levels. I can directly use the relationship operator and go. But in case of 5 levels, or if I have to go up to down, I will add that primary contact as a related contact on all the other accounts in the hierarchy, and then use account related uh, account contact in the sharing set.
So are you not going to create unnecessary data all the time? Can we do this? Have you thought about any other solution for this?
The other solution I thought was external account hierarchy, which we could have used. But with the external account hierarchy, if we want to do the sharing, that only happens one way, wherein the uh, topmost role of the lower account gets attached to the topmost role of the higher account. So in this way, although the accounts which are up in the hierarchy will be able to get access to the lower ones, but the reverse would not be able to happen.
And any other solution?
The other could be then instead of doing all this, we create Apex managed sharing. And every time there is an account hierarchy created, we query all the primary users and do the Apex managed sharing. When we take off an account, we remove that sharing. So we would end up, instead of creating those many account contact relationship records, we'll end up creating those many sharing records in the sharing table.
Because, and what is the difference you see between these two? The first answer and this answer. In terms of records creation is the only problem, or because in the first solution also, when you mentioned you would be creating account contact record, if something changes, you will have to delete that record as well.
Right.
So is
That's
both are same or different?
in a way, they are both the same, as in the amount of record creation is going to be the same. The event handling is also going to be done for both the association as well as the disassociation. But the reason I went with this is that I wanted the sharing sets to do it for me instead of writing it into sharing tables, as sharing table writing is an expensive operation compared to writing it into a separate object which doesn't have a lot of sharing implications.
Okay, thank you. And another question that I had external CDC. Can you go back to that? Sharing itself, yes.
Yeah.
So can you explain this again? How will this work?
So I
Drivers.
think that is this is the same. I think Ram, I already said that probably
Yeah.
there is a gap in my understanding here
No,
because
no.
the way I was envisioning it, as you said, it won't work that way. I'll have to go back and check it again.
What would be your solution now for this?
So if I'm not going to go with, let's say, external CDC, let me just give me a second. I'll think through. Yeah. So in this case, then instead of going with external CDC, I'll rely on the logistics system to as in whenever there is a new uh, pickup request created or cancelled, it would make a request response call to Mule. Mule would then uh, publish a platform event into Salesforce, and I will subscribe to that platform event and then take appropriate action out on top of it in terms of creating sharing records or updating something in the schedule or anywhere else.
How will drivers see pickup and a customer? That's the question. So what you're saying, a mule will help you do that, or how will that happen?
No, no. So I'm going to, for driver to be able to see the pickup, uh, one moment, I'll just go. See the pickup request, this rec object which we have here is coming from the logistics system. So when a driver is assigned to a particular route and there are pickup requests associated with that route, I am relying that in their existing tab, they'll be able to see what all pickup requests they need to go today
Mm-hmm.
and what is the route they need to follow. So that is something which is BAU. The sharing of the customer record for the driver, which is a need here where it says that it should be able to see the customer. As I mentioned, that when a new pickup request is associated with a particular driver, so there are three instances: either a new pickup request is created, cancelled, or maybe you have changed the driver associated with the pickup request. All these three cases, we will have logistics system creating a platform event into Salesforce via Mule. So logistics system will tell Mule will create a platform event, and I would subscribe to that platform event to take the action. So if it is a new pickup request, I would have the driver information and I would know which pickup request it is and for what schedule it is. I would go and identify the customers which are associated with that schedule and create a sharing record for the driver in the system for him to be able to see the customer details as well as the location and other whatever related records he need access to.
Sharing, you will create the sharing record through Apex.
Yes, Apex, I will, because driver is an internal license. I
Mm-hmm.
can create, use Apex managed sharing to share the customer and other uh, records for them.
Yeah, I'm still not very clear that how will drivers see the pickup request for the first time? Because you mentioned that driver would be assigned to a route, and under route there would be a pickup request. So if the driver will go to the route, driver will be able to see the pickup request. Will that be by default, or how will that happen? Because driver also needs to see the old pickup request on the same route and the new pickup request. So how will this happen? So.
So see the pickup request from, if we need to show pickup request data also
Mhm.
within the Salesforce app, then we can have an LWC which can be exposed on the Salesforce One mobile app for the driver to be able to see it. I already have a link here with the user, which is an indirect lookup, which would associate this pickup request with a particular driver. So if I, as a driver, I am going in and going to a particular schedule and want to see the pickup request associated with it, I'll be able to do that. If I go to the route record directly, and then I want to see all the pickup requests associated with it for me through querying the pickup request object with the driver association, I'll be able to show it on the LWC. But my assumption here, Ram, was that for looking at the pickup request or the route, driver need not come to Salesforce app. That driver will be able to do in their existing tab, which is already installed in their truck. Hence, I didn't propose any UI in Salesforce app to be for the driver to go and see this data.
Okay, so you assume that it is going to stay as it is.
Yes.
Okay.
They would only, my assumption was they would only come to the Salesforce app when they are at the customer location and they want to now create a case for that customer because they are not able, there is an issue with the pickup.
Okay. Okay. So
Himanshoo, just a question and on the data model, while we are talking about data model here for so long, location-based profile, you highlighted that as an LDV. Is it an LDV or not?
Location based profile can be potentially an LDV because I'll show you the. So I've got 400,000 locations and I've got 600,000 waste profiles. So primarily for 200,000 customers, 2 locations and this. So if I multiply this and each waste profile is associated with multiple locations, then that is an object which can potentially go to an LDV.
So what's your mitigation? Because on your slide, you just described about cases, right?
Yeah, as in I'm not going to archive. So from a short-term perspective, we can definitely use the indexing as well as selective queries while querying the data for the junction object. But there is not going to be any archival strategy as all the inactive customers also need to be uh, uh, in Salesforce. Hence, I'm not proposing to archive it.
So we never archive it no matter how much the data keeps growing here. First of all, it's a pretty high volume to begin with. And then you're proposing to handle it through selective query and custom indexing. That's it, right?
Yes, because it is a regulatory need for me to keep all the inactive customer data also in Salesforce, and hence I'm not recommending it to be archived. But we can definitely, given that it is a master detail between the two, there is not going to be an ownership skew issue. We are not querying that data very frequently. So again, from a performance perspective, it not have a significant impact from both from a sharing as well as general querying perspective.
Okay, all right.
So on the pickup, I have one more question. If you can go to the solutioning, so you had mentioned that the way pickup would be selected, that the customer will go to a lightning page, and that's where customer would be able to select the location, and the calendar widget will be shown.
Right.
On that calendar widget, they can select any date or anything, right? But here the pickup gets confirmed only when you have the integration, when you receive the response from the backend systems, right?
Right.
So what will customer select on the calendar widget? What will customer see on the calendar widget? Whether they can see any date or because they can't see the available dates, right? Because it's not real time available to them.
Yes. So, Ram, just give me a moment. I'm running out of battery. I'll just switch on my power.
Yeah.
So the way I've assumed the process to be, Ram,
Mm-hmm.
just put in 1 moment. I'm really sorry for this. I didn't realize the power wasn't connected. Yeah. So the way I saw the process was that as a customer, when I am doing a new scheduling request, I'm going to select my preferred dates. Those dates are going to then go to the logistics system, and either the logistics system is going to accept those days as is, or is going to change it, and I will get the updated dates back as part of the journey. So the way I envision the journey is I will go to a particular waste profile, as in select a waste profile, select a location, select my preferred dates, then send it to logistics system, and then it comes back with the updated response, which gets updated on my record as well. And I, as a customer, am also able to see it on the screen.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you are going to override schedule page
Right.
somewhere. So how would you start? You start with the schedule and then you will go to the
So
pick.
I go to the schedule tab. Now the existing schedules would be there in a list view for me. So if I want to edit any existing schedule, I would click on the edit link. If I want to create a new schedule, I would create the new link. Once then if I click on the new, it will give me a selection of as in first I'll select a location and a waste profile associated with that location. At that moment, I will check if for that combination there is already an existing schedule in the system or not. If there is one, I will pre-populate the form with those details already. If it's a new combination you've selected, then it will give you the widget. There will not be any pre-populated data. You will select your preferred dates and frequency, and then when you hit the next, that data would then flow into the logistics system, and you will get your response in case there is no error.
So now you are not using external CDC. So what would be your pickup object? Is that going to be a custom object or something else?
So pickup object will still be the external object. I'm not going to clone that data into Salesforce. But yes, instead of using the external CDC, as I said, I will rely on the logistics system to call in into Salesforce and create platform events and run my processes on back of those platform events.
Okay. Chetan, do you have any questions on this?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, Himanshoo, so you mentioned that you are going to convert the lead using screen flow, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I think I have a question on some other. Let's cover the system landscape quickly and few questions on the dev life cycle.
Sure.
So why did you selected MuleSoft as an ETL tool? What is the justification?
So the reason with going with MuleSoft is MuleSoft already has a very potent ETL capabilities. It has got DataWave, which allows you to write scripts and do a lot of transformation and standardization. For staging DB, you can have an external PL SQL DB or any other DB you can connect it to for your staging requirements. And as I already have Mule as an ESB, it also brings in that instead of going with two separate vendors, I recommended to use a common vendor because you'll have a better support mechanism in terms of both the key tools are going to be owned by the single vendor itself.
Okay. What is the difference between ESB and ETL? And when do you decide one versus another?
So ETL is primarily when you got to handle large data volumes in terms of you're going to do data migration, data archival, where the quantum of the data is very high. The processing required on the data is very high, which cannot be done in your static memory, as in your static memory of the process. You need an external tables to write the data and process it on, like a staging database. That is where an ETL capability would come into place. Whereas ESB is more like a middleware, which is going to help you orchestrate integrations between two end systems, helps you with your protocol transformations, any kind of request transformations needed, error handling, logging, all these capabilities you get from your ESB.
Okay. So you just mentioned that ETL needs a good amount of capability which cannot be done in the static memory. How many cores you need in the MuleSoft approximately if you go with MuleSoft as an ETL tool?
I would not want to guess any number. Sorry, I don't have an answer for
No,
this.
but let's say, right, let's assume the cores of the MuleSoft are normally like 4 GB, 16 GB, right? Do you think that would be enough for MuleSoft to act as an ETL? Or you just going to blow up, right, whole the MuleSoft stack just to make sure that because just data view would not help you, right? You need to have that support. How you are thinking about that?
So the way, see, I know for sure that the dataloader.io product, which is marketed, is also built on top of ETL capabilities of MuleSoft. As I said, for staging, we would have static databases doing the staging for us. So from a transient memory perspective, when the processing of the data which we are doing in a memory, I think I would not want to quote a number, but I'm sure by increasing the number of cores, we can handle the transformation, because there are two types of memory required. One is to write transform data into a table, which can be a static staging database. We don't need to store the transform data in a transient memory. The transient memory only needs to operate on the data set in consideration right now in terms of standardizing it, transforming it to be ready for the next stage. So as far as I understand, I think Mule can handle that kind of a payload capability.
Okay. I think we are over the time. Ram or Chetan, do you have any last question for Himanshu to ask?
Yeah, one question on system landscape. So you mentioned that you are going to have four auth provider because you have got social sign-on requirement as well, Facebook, Twitter, and Google, right? So you mentioned that you are going to use auth provider. So can you explain to me that how many auth provider you are going to configure and how will that work end to end?
So we'll have to configure 3 separate auth providers for the 3 social ID providers separately.
Mm-hmm.
We can have one single registration handler, and from there have utility methods which invoke an appropriate utility method accordingly to handle the payload and process it. Or optionally, we can create 3 separate registration handlers for the 3 auth providers, as the data structure which you receive from each of the auth provider is different as part of registration handler when the create user and update user methods are invoked.
So what do we do in the registration handler?
So registration handler has 2 key methods called create user and update user. Once you get the ID token from your identity provider, that is the OIDC provider, the platform validates that identity provider. Then optionally, if needed, we can query additional data from the OIDC provider if we need to query additional attributes of the user. And then the registration handler kicks in, wherein first the create user method would be run, and then the update user methods are run. As part of the create user method, if we want to create a new user, we need to return a user object. If that user object has an ID in it, then it treats it as an existing user. If we return an user object which is a new user object, then it is able to create a new user as part of the registration handler, and then create a third party account link with that user and allow that user to log in.
So let's say out of 3, I need to disable Facebook. So user has used all 3 social sign-on login, Google, Facebook, and Twitter. And as an administrator, I want to revoke Facebook. What should I do?
So if I want to remove Facebook for everyone in the organization, as in I no longer,
just for a particular user.
so then I can go and delete the third party account link for Facebook for that particular user.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that was all I had on this. Chetan,
Do you have anything, or we are good?
I think just one last question regarding this, analytics API access from the website. Can you help me understand how does this work and how are you ensuring that this is secure?
So there is, as part of my website changes, I'm going to do an OAuth flow called web service, as in web server flow. Through that, it would authenticate itself with Mule, get an access token and a refresh token, which would be stored safely in the website server. So every time I need to run the analytics API, I would to authenticate with the Mule, I would take the refresh token, get an access token, then finally call the Mule API. Mule in turn will then call Salesforce and use Jot and the integration user and the REST Analytics API to get the metadata along with report data and return it back as a response back to website.
So you've written here, website is calling the analytics API.
So this I meant primarily that as through the analytics API via Mule, I'm going to get the data, but obviously Mule will have to expose an API to website for it to be able to get it, and Mule will then consume the analytics API of Salesforce.
What's the value add of Mule here? Why are you proposing Mule here?
I'm proposing Mule because I do not want to create a P2P connection between website and Salesforce directly. I want to have a centralized ESB driven integration architecture where all my API routing is done through Mule itself, because it gives me, as I said, I'm going to do logging, error handling, everything through Mule. So if I start building P2P connections, then I'll have to do a separate logging between that P2P connection for my overall team, as in the infrastructure team, to see what's happening with that API.
And anytime a visitor comes here, let's say they write a robot which can just keep refreshing this website it'll make a API call to Salesforce to keep fetching the right in data, right? There's no downside, there's no issue with that, no risk with that.
Yes, so
it's a public facing website, right? We are exposing live data on a public facing website. Can you think of any risks, any issues, and what would be your mitigations for those?
So there are two ways we can mitigate that risk. One is on the specific page where we are showing this, if somebody is refreshing it again and again, we can have the additional captcha check built into it, that if it is getting refreshed very frequently, then we bring in that captcha. The other option,
if it's refreshed 5 times, then 6th time suddenly captcha shows up. Is that how you see it works?
Yes. Based on the cookies in that, I can keep a count and the last runtime. And then if it is refreshing very quickly, I can get the captcha coming in conditionally. A lot of Salesforce, a lot of Google sites also do a similar thing. The other option could be that we completely change this, and instead of doing a real-time data getting every time we load the page, we have a mule-based job, which is, let's say, running every day or every hour, fetching the data from Salesforce, and then give that data into website. The requirement in that case would be that website should have a database where it can store the data, and then website will not be able to use an analytics API, because analytics API also gives you the HTML of the report. So the entire report UI will have to be built afresh on the website, and Salesforce will only act as the source of data for that report.
So what's the final solution now?
One question I have. So you are saying here analytics API gives you real-time data.
So analytics API, when you hit the API, it gives you the entire metadata of your report along with the, as in it, if you have a report with a chart and all, you get everything in an HTML form, which you can then dump in an HTML page and show to the user.
But do you think that analytics API gives me real-time data? When, let's say, through the mule, if I'm going to fetch analytics API every 1 second, am I getting the real-time data?
As far as I know, analytics API runs the report and give you the latest data itself.
So Himanshoo, just clarification. When you say analytics API, are you talking about CRM analytics or you're talking about Salesforce reports and dashboard?
I'm talking about the Salesforce reports analytics API, which is available to us.
CRM analytics.
Not the Tableau CRM analytics API, because that gives you this lens and the story definition. It doesn't give you a report in an HTML format. I'm talking about the REST analytics API, which is available, which gives you a Salesforce report in a form of an HTML, which you can show on any external site.
Okay.
So did you consider Lightning out?
I did, but as far as I know, it is a beta component right now, and hence I did not recommend it as part of my solution. Having said that, I think if with this CAPTCHA thing and a lot of API calls, if that is a concern, the other recommendation I would rather say is build an LWC page and expose it on the site, and then embed it, as in through your website, redirect the user to that page, and we can use URL rewriter to ensure that the URLs matches with the URL of the public site.
Why not use the caching feature of ESB?
Yes, we could use that as well. I didn't think of that.
Okay, I think we are already 10 minutes.